Welcome to Live.Work.Thrive. I'm Michaela Birmingham, Scary Mommy executive producer, and I will be the moderator for tonight's panel. If you are in a relationship right now, you may be thinking, sure, I said in sickness and in health, but does that cover a worldwide pandemic, civil unrest, natural disasters, a year of quarantine? Really? I want to see the fine print. Tonight, we're going to discuss quite simply how to not hate your partner in a pandemic. What we are experiencing is not normal. And for many, it is starting to take a toll on our relationships. Now, I want to stress that tonight's session is for couples who are looking to improve their situations with tangible strategies. If you feel unsafe in your relationship or are experiencing physical or mental abuse, please seek help. The number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline is up on the screen, 1-800-799-7233. Everyone deserves a relationship free from violence. And so if you're ready, the team there is available to assist and listen with confidential support 24/7. Tonight, we're going to hear from a mom and New York Times best-selling author who gave her own marriage some CPR with a variety of specialists and techniques. We will also learn from a psychologist who specializes in female empowerment, as well as a financial therapist and a marriage and family therapist. Literally the only one missing from this group is Dr. Fauci. Seriously, you want to stick around to hear what these experts have to say about words you can use to diffuse an argument before one starts, what to do if COVID canceled your sex life, I mean, really, how to financially prepare for a separation, and when to seek professional help, and how to find a provider that fits your budget. Let's meet our panelists. We have tonight with us Jancee Dunn, a New York Times best-selling author of 5 books, including How to Not Hate Your Husband After Kids. I have this book right here with me because it's like my Bible. She was a staff writer at Rolling Stone for over a decade, and she writes for many publications, among them Vogue, Travel and Leisure, Food and Wine, and Parents, and was a columnist for GQ and the Oprah magazine. Welcome, Jancee. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here.
Also tonight with us is Melissa Robinson Brown. She goes by Dr. Mel, and Dr. Mel is a licensed clinical psychologist. She is also assistant clinical professor in pediatrics and psychiatry at Mount Sinai Hospital and adjunct professor in the NYU Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development, Department of Applied Psychology. She takes a holistic approach to her work, encouraging her clients to focus not only on mental health and mindfulness, but also physical health and wellness. Later on, we'll be hearing from Amanda Clayman, who is a financial therapist specializing in the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral aspects of our money and financial well-being. Also, we will hear from Karen Forstoff, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. Karen works with children, adults, couples, and families, specializing in parenting and divorce. Before we get started, we have a few quick reminders. You can submit questions in the comments wherever you are watching tonight, and we may feature your question later on in the show. Also, very important, join our mailing list so you don't miss any of our upcoming Live, Work, Thrive events. Visit scarymommy.com/liveworkthrive to sign up and stay in touch because it's a pandemic and I know you have no plans. So just add your name. All right, let's get into tonight's topic. So how to not hate your partner in a pandemic. Easier said than done. It's been how many months now? I'm in a throuple with Dr. Fauci, and one of us has got to go at this point, okay? There are so many issues at play here. Too much togetherness, financial stress, kids, not to mention the fact that no one is wearing actual pants anymore, okay? It's just a bad seat all over. Dr. Mel, let's start with you. As a practitioner, are you seeing an uptick in couples who are struggling in their relationships more than in pre-COVID times? And are women suffering more than the men?
So thank you. First, thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm super excited to be here. And yes, I am seeing all sorts of sort of relationship difficulties that are coming up for people, especially women. I should say that I see more women than men. So I don't know if I completely know if men are suffering more, but I do see that like we're together all of the time. We're with each other 24/7. And so it is just harder. It is harder to like be around the same person all the time, dealing with all of their things. And I imagine the same holds true for men as well.
So Jancee, we're reading so much right now about the intense pressure that this pandemic is putting on mothers specifically. I mean, the New York Times had to set up a scream hotline, for God's sakes.
Yes.
In your book, you point to a UK study that measured the subconscious brain activity in sleeping men and women. I think this is so fascinating. The study found that a baby's crying was the #1 nighttime sound most likely to wake up a woman. But it didn't even factor into the top 10 for men, lagging behind car alarms and a strong wind. Are you kidding me? So do you think the pandemic has started to shift some of these long ingrained imbalances now that we're home and we're together more and everyone's experiencing more of, the same day to day when it comes to the fair share, or are things getting worse?
Okay, so pre-pandemic, when a heterosexual couple had a baby, research shows that women pick up an average of 15 extra hours a week of childcare and chores. That's a lot, 15 hours. And now the numbers are shooting up even more. And I was part of that Primal Scream, New York Times series. And, we know that women are bearing the brunt of this sort of thing with the pandemic. And so I was looking at the research, and early numbers are kind of encouraging. Men are stepping up a little bit more. I mean, this pandemic has sort of laid bare what's working and what isn't in our households, right? Like there's nowhere to hide. Nobody does anything. Nobody goes anywhere. It's all about your home. And so there have been a couple of studies, and men are stepping up a little bit more. Although in the New York Times, there was this survey where men tend to overestimate what they do. So in this one survey, almost half of the men said that they were doing most of the homeschooling. And then when they asked the women, is that true? Are the men doing almost all the homeschooling? Only 3% of the women said that. So half, 3%, a little bit of a disparity. So, perception is also important. So, a little bit, but it's not enough, in my
It's
opinion.
certainly not enough, for sure. And I think, we were talking about this earlier. The pandemic has been excruciating for couples with kids, especially young children. So, the added stress of safety protocols, the lack of social interaction, the childcare constraints, it really have stretched many families to the limit. Dr. Mel, should we just expect to hate everyone and everything until we reach herd immunity, or can we actually reach new levels of bonding with our partner during this chaotic time?
So I will be so super honest, right? Like there have definitely been times that I have wanted to run far away from this home, because it's a lot to be on top of our partners, our kids all the time. But I think one of the things we have to remember is we can get really stuck in this place where we're telling ourselves this narrative of like how horrible this is going to be and how hard it is to be stuck inside all of the time. And we need to start telling ourselves a different narrative, and then also doing things differently. So family nights need to look different. They don't get to be, out to the pizza parlor where everybody would hang out. We have to change that up. We have to find the things that help us get back to having fun, because I think we've forgotten how to have fun. We do everything at home. We work at home. We school at home. And that's just, we are on top of each other, and it's hard, and we're not really thinking about how do we have more fun now. So I think one of the things we want to do is like figure out like what does your family need, you and your family and your partner, and then how do we make sure that that is happening.
Yeah, I think I hear that a lot from families, in that even though we're home together all the time, it's just not quality time. It's like you're cleaning more because everyone's in your house and they're eating more, and no one's eating lunch. They used to eat lunch at the cafeteria at school. Now they're eating lunch in your kitchen, and it's just all of the things are amped up, but there's no quality. So Jancee, I mean, what do you say to that piece? How do you start to think about quality?
Well, I think that it's kind of like what Dr. Mel says, that we can use this as an opportunity to really analyze what systems in our household are working and what ones aren't. And it's not just chores and childcare. It's how are you communicating? How are you communicating with your kids? How are you resolving fights? Like we have time. I mean, I know a lot of people just work 7 days a week, but for others, there's nothing to do on weekends. Like, this is the time where you can fix and tweak what's going on. I mean, it's interesting. Big events like a pandemic can act as a kind of a cultural reset. And I'm hoping, I think back to World War II, and when all the men were off to war and there was this big gap in the labor force, that's when women started working. And they, after the war, not only did bosses say, oh, these are good workers, think I want to keep them, but women like to work, and it changed the culture. And I'm hoping, maybe I'm optimistic, but I'm hoping that this will also happen with the pandemic, at least somewhat.
In some ways, yes, for sure. Hopefully we can overcome the fact that sadly so many women have had to leave the workforce right now.
Right.
Because of all of these demands that are, unmet by just our childcare crisis, for one thing, in this country. So Jancee, you mentioned communication, and I think that is so key, because so much of how we interact with our partner and, how our relationship, is successful or not has to do with communication. So I want to take us now to Karen Forstoff, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's going to describe a way you can communicate to your partner when you're not happy with something. Here's Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Forstoff, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I think when we're together and we're really irritated with our partner, we need to find a way to communicate, right, in a way that's effective and adaptive right now. The feedback wheel goes like this. It's like, here's what happened, and it might be, we got up this morning, I took a shower, got dressed, I'm sitting here ready for breakfast, and you're still in bed, lying around, and you can't come in and you're not really paying attention to me and look, I made breakfast or whatever. So that really upset me. It made me feel, disrespected or unappreciated, right? And what I'd like to happen next time is this. The meaning I make of it is that you just really don't care, right, about us, or you really don't want to put any effort into this. And then this is what I'd like to have happen next time, is that maybe we both get up at 8 together and we both get ready for the day and we have breakfast each day together. That would really help me. And then we let our partner listen to that. And they have to learn, they have to learn skills too, which is to listen and to be able to say, oh, I can see your perspective.
So how does this work, Dr. Mel? Is kind of restating what happened and the way you're feeling about something, does that help your partner process if maybe they missed it the first time when they were actually doing it?
Yes. I think the more we can communicate and use a language, the better off we will be. And the choices that we make in our language is the difference between putting someone on the defensive and putting them on the offensive, right? So if there's something that you need to change in your partner, using I statements followed by feelings, followed by something factual, is going to get you much further than you did this or you never, right? And so I think that that's really important in terms of how we communicate things. And the beauty, right, is if we say to our partner, hey, I said this, and our partner or even us can take the time to reflect back what we heard, it gives us an opportunity to make corrections, because maybe what you said is not what somebody heard. And so maybe that needs to be restated or stated differently so that the communication can continue. So in some ways, we also have to just slow down. We have to slow down and we have to think about, are we putting our partner on the offensive or are we putting them on the defensive?
It's slow down. It's like when you're watching Netflix, they always give you a recap of the last episode before you get into the main show, right? That's what you do. A little like on our last episode. That's what you need. All right. So here, we're going to give you some more examples because I really do think that these little language tricks and tips are so essential and can be really useful. So we're going to give you both a couple of examples of the right and the wrong way to phrase a few situations, and then we'll discuss them. Okay. So here's the first one. You never get up with the baby, which makes me want to stab you. Perhaps not the best choice of words. So the alternative would be, I feel so much better and less tired when we take turns getting up at night with the baby. So Jancee, tell me why this one is, better or worse, right and wrong. What do you think?
Well, again, like Dr. Mel said, leading with I feel. Number one, it's also strategic, because if you're talking about how you feel, your partner can't argue with you. It's how you feel. It stops an argument cold, because what are they going to say? That's not the way you feel. And it's just softer, and it's a way to make yourself vulnerable. And what's interesting, Dr. Mel and I have talked about this before, is that it can feel more frightening to people. I used to get upset and say, you never, you always, you don't, you're a bum, you sit on the couch all the time. That felt safer to me sometimes. I wanted to know if, Dr. Mel, you had any thoughts about that. If it can feel safer to feel self-righteous, rather than to feel vulnerable about stating clearly what you need or how you feel.
Yeah.
Is that just me?
No, it's not at all. I mean, I think the thing that you named too is like, when you're vulnerable, while somebody can't argue with your feelings, they can be dismissive of you. They can tell you, that makes no sense that you feel like that about this. It's so not a big deal, right? The fact that I didn't put the baby's diaper in the diaper genie, like, why are you making such a big deal about that? And the reality is, it pissed me off, right? And so I think that's the vulnerability factor, is that somebody can actually not hold your vulnerability, which is hard. And so we do tend to go what's safer and what's angry. Y'all, the cat definitely wants to be on screen tonight. Let me just tell you.
The cat is here for all the relationship advice. So Dr. Mel, are we allowed to say that pissed me off? Like, is that approved language or no? Just asking for a friend.
So you can say, I'm pissed.
I'm pissed is allowed. Yes. Okay.
Right.
All right.
That's the same thing as I'm angry. It's just,
Great. Okay. I'm just checking for the records. I'm keeping my receipts here. So next one is, here we go. Another phrase for you. First one, you never empty the dishwasher. I may have said this once or 50 million times. Alternatively, you could say, can you handle emptying the dishwasher tonight? Now, the word handle is in this second option. And Jancee, I want you to explain this, because this is one of the things that you put in your book. And I literally tell all my girlfriends this. I'm like, just say handle. Just say handle. And the man is like, I can handle it. Anything. What do you got for me? It's like, yeah. Please explain. Where did you come up with this? It's genius.
You just sort of embed a challenge in there, right? And it's not, it's said in kind of neutral language, but who's going to say they can't handle it, especially if it's something like a dishwasher? So I have found that that's very effective. It's both, it kind of gamifies what you're asking, and it's also, it's satisfying because it's a tiny bit passive aggressive, only in your mind. And it just works. And again, and tone is everything. And, you just have a nice, neutral, friendly tone, even when you're not feeling it. Dr. Mel, you are nodding like,
yes.
Yeah.
Because tone does matter.
Manners matter, right?
Yes,
please and thank you matter, even in your home, even when you're not feeling it,
100%. So now give me the secret language that I need to make my can you handle the thing not be perceived as nagging, because in my house, I'm nag number one, enemy of the state. All right. But I feel like if no one's nagging, no one's hair will ever get washed. No one's shoes will ever be put away. We will live in squalor if I don't nag. So, and I also feel like this is a woman thing, that a man is asking, a woman's nagging. Like, enough with this. How do I do the phrase, can you put away your stuff? Can you handle putting away your stuff? Like, how does it, I think maybe it's nagging when it's like in succession. What do you think, Dr. Mel?
Probably. Yeah, I think it becomes nagging when you have asked multiple times, right? And I agree with you. Like, I'm just thinking about my own relationship. I probably nag way more than my husband does, because sometimes those things don't bother him as much, right? And for us, depending on who you are and sort of how you're showing up as a partner, those things matter more. Like, if you want the space to look a certain way, like, I'm asking you to pick your things up because I don't want all this crap in my front entryway, right? And they're like, what's the big deal sometimes? So I think, what's the secret language to nagging? One is just to talk about expectations. I think that helps a ton, right? If you say like, my expectation is that I want the entryway to be clean. I'll give you a different example. My husband and I do a chore chart. And so this is one of the best things that we have introduced into our relationship, and we've kept it going throughout the pandemic, which has helped. Which is essentially like we just switch rooms, right? One week he gets the kitchen, and then I'm doing like the dining room and the living room, and then we swap. And we know that those areas are going to get clean. So there's no nagging necessary because we're just keeping up our end of the bargain. And so I think that's part of the communication and like can eliminate some of the nagging is if you just set some expectations, right? And agree to follow them. And you can absolutely do this with your kids. Give your kids chores, give them the dates by which they need to be done. It eliminates so much of the nagging.
I think conflicts arise when things are not clear. And when, it's that thing of you end up fighting about, oh, who deserves to sleep in more on the weekends? I worked hard. When things are clear, when you have very clear roles, and when each person has full ownership of those roles, it's life-changing. And I know it can, we have a chore chart too. And systems work, and they're not sexy. Yeah. It's not sexy to sit around and talk about who's doing what, but like if someone has full ownership, then you eliminate so much. So that's what works for us too. Chore
Agreed.
charts.
I love the chore chart. And fun fact, you can ask your Alexa, you can program it with the names of your kids, and you can say, Alexa, whose turn is it? And Alexa will give you a name. It's like the best thing. It randomly chooses a name. You have to just go into your like account and you give, Julie and Steve or whatever your kids' names are, and it'll tell you for any time of day, just ask Alexa. It's the best.
I love this.
That's a takeaway.
Totally
Me too.
Integrating it.
Fun tech hack. All right. So let's talk about when you feel a blowout brewing. Like, I feel like there's like a physical feeling that you can feel like you're like, oh, here it comes, and like sometimes you're trying to avoid it at all costs because it's like, we're already exhausted. It's a pandemic. Like you don't need to be fighting and arguing on top of everything else. Right. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Mel, is there some sort of count to 10 hack or some strategy that you can use to diffuse the fight before it even happens? Because literally, like, I'm going to like breathe my last breath soon in this pandemic. Like I can't waste energy on fighting. It's just like, I don't have it in me. How can you diffuse before it even starts?
Yeah. So I would say two things, right? The first is like, I encourage everyone have a journal. It doesn't have to be a traditional journal. It can be your phone. It can be, you can do voice memos, but take that journal or that voice memo and put down every single nasty, evil curse you
have. How about
have
Voodoo
about
Doll?
Your
Is
partner.
that a similar technique? Voodoo Doll? Stab
Maybe,
something?
Yes.
Okay.
Stab it, right? Because what you're feeling is pent up energy and it needs to get out. Those feelings and those emotions need to come out in some way, shape, or form. And putting them in the journal first allows you to at least say all the things you want to say to your partner and like want to strangle, right? And the Voodoo Doll does the same thing. Go in the shower and curse like a sailor, right? Curse, yell, do all the things in that space. So that's the first thing I would suggest is like, if you feel it starting to build up inside of you, get it out until you've calmed down, right? Emotions are like waves and anger is the same thing. When your emotion comes in, you're going to have a peak of anger. Please don't go talk to your partner when you're at the peak because nothing good is going to happen. But you can bring yourself down. You can try to regulate yourself. That's one of the ways to do it. The other thing I suggest is just to respect people's boundaries. There was, I don't know if y'all have seen that new Netflix show, Malcolm and Marie. And, if you haven't had a chance to watch Michaela, like go check it out.
Okay, I need a new show. I'm gonna write that down.
It's a movie.
Oh, it's a movie. Okay.
Yeah, it's a movie. But the thing that I pulled from that is like there was a boundary that was set that was ignored, right? In that movie, she said, let's talk about this tomorrow morning. Because she knew they were drunk, she was angry, it was late, they were tired, it had been a long night. And he was like, nope, I want to talk about it now. Let's talk about it now. So you have to respect your partner's boundary. If they say, I need a minute, or I can't talk about this right now, you need to just give them that space but loop back, right? Like, don't just let it go, but just, if you can get out your aggression and respect the boundary, so much less likely to have the blowout.
That is a great piece of advice. So call a friend, go in the shower, get it out in the journal is going to help you get to that place of calm. Okay. So Jancee, let's say you missed out on the calming down phase and you actually launched into the argument. What in your book, you mentioned this concept of like taking an actual timeout from the fight, like mid fight, to say, we're getting too crazy here. We need to take a timeout. I really love that strategy, but I would love to know, like, how do you remind yourself in the heat of the moment, oh, we got to stop and, put a pause on this? And how do you get your partner to agree to do that as well?
It's really simple. We use the timeout sign. We go like this. I swear, you just go, if you know some demons are going to fly out of your mouth, then, and you know when it's coming, you know when it's building, right? Go like that. And then we run away to opposite corners of the room into another room. And we've talked about this ahead of time. It's not punitive. It's not running. It's not storming out in order to punish your partner. It's acknowledging, like, I can't trust what I'm going to say right now. So we're going to take a break and then I will be back. I mean, that's one of the expectations that you should, talk about ahead of time when you start using this timeout. But it's helped me tremendously because I have a little bit of a temper. And now I know when it's building and I know when I'm about to, I don't want to resort to name calling. And so that's what I do. It's anytime you can use something as a circuit breaker, do it. Even if it's 2 seconds, sometimes I think, what am I feeling? Because, we talked about vulnerability. I think, what am I really feeling? What am I really feeling? Because there's hard emotions, anger, hostility, and then there's soft emotions behind that. And that's often how you're really feeling. Disappointment, sadness, embarrassment. Sometimes when you're embarrassed by something or someone's mocking you, you lash out. And so even just taking that quick pause, like, what am I feeling? Like the feelings chart behind Dr. Mel, like it makes you feel, it just gives you that 2 seconds of pausing. And sometimes I even think, we went to this one therapist who said, just quickly ask yourself, is what I'm about to say respectful? It's this really great therapist named Terry Real. And he says he advocates full respect living. It's hard to live up to. I mean, we're all human, right? But he says that nothing you say or do when you interact with your partner should drop below the level of simple respect. And I can hold the word respect in my mind. Like, it's not, when your mind is swirling when you're upset, but I can remember that. Is it respectful? Or sometimes just respectful if I'm really revved up, and if it's not respectful, boop. Choo.
All right. That takes some restraint, but I think that is a good policy. And if you can both kind of agree to that over brunch with a mimosa when you're not fighting under like very nice cordial terms, don't bring that rule up in the middle of a fight. Probably not a great time. I think that could work. So I'm going to try that. Also, I need more mimosas in my life.
Me too.
So now, Jancee, I want to ask you one other thing. So let's say, again, you failed at the timeout, you failed at the calming down, and your kids overheard you having an argument. Can even, the youngest 6-month-old child understand that their parents are fighting, even if they're not at the stage of communicating yet?
That was one of the mistakes that my husband and I made when our child was small. When she was a baby, we thought, she's a baby. She's not affected. Who cares? We can fight. What does she know? She doesn't even speak yet. And in fact, researchers measure the brainwaves of 6-month-old babies when their parents were communicating in harsh, argumentative voices. And the baby's brainwaves went haywire. They were having a stress response, and they're 6 months old. So if you think that, I used to do this thing with my husband where we would selectively fight. I would be chilly with him and super sweet to my child, and I reserved my ire for him. And of course my child was affected, and I really thought that she wasn't. We used to fight over my babies. When my daughter was a toddler, we would fight over her head when she was watching Curious George. Kids absorb it all, don't they, Dr. Mel? Like, you think
yes,
they're not going to get any of the shrapnel, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
Even babies.
No, I think that I do think that kids absorb it. But here's the thing that I think is also important, right? Kids have to understand how to resolve conflict.
Mhm.
And so I would say that it's not that you can't ever fight in front of your kids, because otherwise they don't learn how to resolve conflict, and they don't learn how to fight in a healthy way. And we need that to be able to be in relation with other people, right? So then what I end up seeing like later down the road when people are with me is I avoid conflict. I don't do it. I don't engage at all, because I don't actually know what to do with it, and it makes me uncomfortable. So I think part of it is like how you fight, right? We don't want to fight dirty. We don't want to be nasty to each other. We don't want to call names. But I think it's important to figure out. I think that kids need to understand that like conflict is okay between their parents, and like this is how we sort of resolve it.
And so what about older kids? Like, obviously toddlers and young babies are getting this cortisol, like stress response, which is not good. Older kids can clearly understand. They can be like, and they can even use that language back on you later, which is never fun. So how do we, explain, let's say things got a little too heated, and let's say you have, a school age kid who, observed. Can you give us some sample language that you might say to, after the fight is over?
Mm-hmm. So that has happened absolutely in our relationship, that we have had bad fights, and our kids have been worried about us, right? If you all are fighting like this, does this mean that like something's wrong or something's going to happen? And so I think the one thing we tell our kids is, yes, mommy and daddy had a fight. And sometimes people in a relationship will have fights, and sometimes they get loud, but we absolutely care about each other and love each other. And we've already started to work through it and talk about it, because that's because we care about each other, right? And so we sort of teach them, like we say to them, it's okay, it happens, and we're working on it, and we're okay, right? I think kids get worried that something's wrong, or that their parents will divorce or their family will break up. And sometimes that does happen, but at least if that's not going to be the case, it's important to explain that to them.
That is a good way of putting it. So we've been talking a lot about, male female dynamic here. And I want to just talk for a second about same-sex couples, because I've been reading and actually just hearing anecdotally from friends that in same-sex couples, there tends to be, not in every case, but there tends to be a more equitable distribution of tasks that you don't necessarily always see with, a male-female relationship. Is there something to be learned from this? Or is this just, is this something that you're seeing, Dr. Mel, in some of the folks that you work with?
So I don't want to sort of generalize too much, because I think every couple is so different. But I think one of the things we may be noticing is that same-sex couples might be less likely to fall into gender roles. And so there might be more of a willingness to say, hey, we're all in this, we're in this relationship, we're raising these kids together, we all need to do our part. And maybe less likely to sort of be in sort of these traditional relationships. So I think what we can take from them is that they're to throw gender roles out the damn window, and let's actually just have a conversation about where are your strengths, right? As opposed to being like, because you're the woman, you need to be doing this, and because you're the man, you need to be doing this. How about where are your strengths, and let's do those in relationship. So if my husband, he's not, but if my husband was like a better cook, I'd be like, you do all the cooking all the time. I don't need to.
Right.
And so it's that kind of thing, I think.
Okay. I like that. Mine is not a good cook either. I feel like I need someone who's a cook and a few other things, but that's for another show. So Jancee, I want to talk about something that you have in your book that is another really fascinating kind of scientific tidbit from the Gottman's research, where these researchers have I guess this ability to like observe a couple and predict whether or not they're going to stay together, which I love. Well, I don't love, but I think that's fascinating. One of the things that they say is that in your day-to-day interaction with your partner, you should have a 20-to-1 positive interaction ratio with your partner. So for every one negative interaction, there should be 20 positive interactions. And this is astounding because I'm thinking to myself, yikes, I don't know if my ratio is trending in the right direction. So a positive interaction could be a touch on the elbow, a thank you, a smile, a quick, I made you a coffee, things like that. So what do you do to strengthen your bond if you think, okay, I counted and we're hurting on the Gottman scale? What can you do to like kind of strengthen your ratio?
I mean, again, this is a perfect opportunity to analyze what's going on, right? And really, sometimes when you do analyze those interactions, it can be a little grim, where you're not as kind to your partner as you should be. And they are really low commitment. I know 20 sounds like a lot, but it can be as simple as if your kid says something inadvertently hilarious, just making eye contact with your husband, just like a little shared warm moment. And, again, like a squeeze, saying thank you. Another thing that the Gottmans talk about is bids for attention. Like maybe this has happened to you where your partner goes, they're reading something on their phone and they go, that's a bid for attention. And that's where you're supposed to then say, oh, what do you got? And sort of pick up on those bids for attention and baby steps. It's just the awareness. I remember when I started becoming aware of our interactions, they really were either neutral or unpleasant, but they were not pleasant at all almost. And I would call Julie and say, Gottman, and say, okay, well, what if I just said like, here's your coffee? Would that count as a good interaction? And she would say, yeah, okay, yeah, that would count. And so it really is just being aware of your tone and thinking of ways that you can make your partner feel good. And it is reciprocal. I mentioned this research about saying thank you to your partner. That really does. There's been research about it, University of Georgia, that those are couples that go the distance that thank each other periodically. It is such a small thing, but it's really not. It's about respect and feeling valued, And even though you don't want to, sometimes you don't want to like, why should I thank him? But if you do it, they tend to do it back sometimes too. And then it's this upward spiral,
And so, I mean, I love this idea. And like, I think we can all think, okay, I can make a conscious effort to, say thank you more, to try and be a little more pleasant in general. But we're in a pandemic here. Okay. Everyone is home. I got a puppy trying to potty train. My Wi-Fi is hanging by a thread. The bids for attention are coming at the wrong time. They're coming when I'm on the phone. They're coming when I'm trying to concentrate. They're coming when I just need to finish some things to do because I'm doing all the things. How do you be positive with your interactions when everything else is literally a hot mess? Dr. Mel, I need your magic here. What are some tricks? Like the house is on fire and you have to be nice. How do you do that?
I don't know if you don't like my magic. My answer to that is you aren't, right? Like this idea that we always have to be positive all the time, I think is unfair to us as adults. Some days are just, and as kids too, some days just aren't great days. And I think we can name that. We can say, you know what, today was not a good day. It doesn't mean you have to then go off and be mean or nasty to your partner or your kids. I think you can say, you know what, I haven't had the best day. And maybe your positive interaction might actually just be, picking up your partner's plate from the table and putting it in the sink, right? That's all we're doing today. But I think it is also okay to just name like, we're not doing all that. Like, it's hard for me to bring out the positive, and I don't want people to feel like they have to force it to come out. So I know that's not like the magic tools.
No, but I think that's good. I think it's a good kind of reality check that, yeah, like we're going through a rough patch right now. It's not going to be all roses and butterflies and freaking sourdough bread loaves, plentiful loaves.
My goodness,
of bread.
Do you see all these people that were doing that though?
Okay. And can I just, one more complaint? The rainbow in the pantry. Okay.
Yeah.
No more.
No,
I don't want to see anymore. And Jancee,
Please
Thank you
no.
for having your books in a normal mixed color scheme. Because
Who
if I
has
see,
time for that?
I don't know.
I don't know.
And
I
can't with the
honestly-
Rainbow Pantry.
Right?
I know people who went to buy books in certain colors that they were lacking in their bookshelf just for their. I'm
Mhm.
like, why are you
To
buying
make
books?
the
you don't-
rainbow?
To make the
Yeah,
rainbow. I mean, you're not even reading the book.
It's not good. It's not
Making no
good.
sense. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Sidebar. Now on this point, I think there's another kind of cool exercise that you point to in your book, Jancee, which is about kind of, even though everything's a hot mess and things are hard and we're going through this struggle right now, it's good to kind of do a recap of what you do like about your partner. And, you
Mhm.
know, maybe you want to talk about it with them. Fun date night activity. Let's make a list, honey, of all the things we like about each other. I mean, really, we're at that point. Why is that kind of articulation of, you know, the things that you do really love about your significant other? Why is that important to think about, and then also to like vocalize back to them?
I mean, everyone likes praise. Everyone likes validation. And, you know, I would catch myself, like, I do this sometimes even with friends where I think something positive about them and I don't say it. I just sort of, it doesn't make it into my mouth. I'm not really sure why. And so I do make a point to do that with my husband. And lately, because I mean, this is a typical pandemic compliment that I gave him. We were at the Stop and Shop, because this is my life. This is all of our lives now, right? And we have a rescue cat, and the vet said to use Fancy Feast pate, and we know that the cat only likes fish flavor. So my husband was very systematically going through all the cat food, the Fancy Feast at Stop and Shop, like trying to pick out the fish flavor. And I said, Tom, you know, that's kind of hot that you're doing that for the cat. And it's not a conventional compliment, but it's what I had at the time. So, you know, everyone likes to be validated, don't they? But I do know it's hard. I do know it's hard right now to just spew out compliments.
It's hard to find them. And maybe they don't have to be
Fancy
conventional compliments. I mean, I like what you did, Jancee. I think that's awesome. And I'm sure your husband appreciated that compliment. So maybe we have to also just think outside of the box in terms of how we are giving our partners validation.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Fancy Feast. All right. I like it. I mean, I'm going to start analyzing the Chewy shopping list a little closer next time. So we are getting a flood of comments and questions from the audience. So I want to go now to a few of those because the audience is like riveted by this conversation.
I love it.
So Dr. Mel, here's one for
She
you.
just gave us a compliment. Yeah, it was good. See,
Yeah.
we're just validated. I'm loving it.
See,
Look at us.
there
We
you
were
go.
both like,
Validation. Look at that.
Yeah.
I didn't even mean to do that. All right. What if this is for you, Dr. Mel, what if you are generally irritated at your spouse, but you don't know what it is? Just like their presence irritates you. Been there.
So I think we always start with what we do know versus what we don't, right? Because sometimes it is true that we're like, I'm really upset at you and I can't even name like what it is, but let's name what we do know about today. What happened today? What happened yesterday, right? And sort of like just go through like a Rolodex almost of like, I don't know what is bothering me now, but I do know that this happened today, I had to take the garbage out again for the third. Oh shoot, maybe it was that third time I had to take the garbage out, even though it was your turn. And then when I asked you about it, you got attitude with me and I didn't even really notice it at the time. So like, I think sometimes when we go into this space of, I don't know, it happens, but then sort of flip it and start thinking about like, what do I know about what has happened lately, right? In the past week or two.
Good point. Okay. So now here's a person who's asking, and what do you do when you feel like you're done? So you're like, I think I'm at the end of my rope. And I think this kind of leads to this idea of how to know when you might need to call in a professional to the situation. And maybe those are two different questions, whether or not you feel like you want to seek some, help from an expert or not. But Jancee, what would be your first step if you're thinking about, what advice would you give someone who's looking for some help with how to figure this out?
Counseling, 100%. It changed everything for us. And there are many, many different ways. I know counseling can be expensive, but there are many ways to get it, especially right now. There's just been this explosion of mental health services. And, sometimes you need a third party to forensically examine your marriage, because you have no perspective. You don't know who's quote unquote right or wrong. And, we can talk about this now or later about ways that you can get counseling, but I'm a big advocate of that.
And
I
Dr.
agree.
Bell, do you think that, we have a dentist, we have our gyno, we have our chiropractor. I mean, should everyone just have like a mental health expert in their regimen? Like the teeth are important, but you need your brain and your relationship and you need your mind and everything to work. You recommend that?
Yes, absolutely. Find your person. And look, this is the thing I love about the work that I do. I definitely have people that I've worked with and we've done our work together. And you know what? They come back to me for checkups, right? Every 6 to 8 months, I might just get a call. Hey, Dr. Mel, can you fit me into your schedule? I just need a couple of tune-ups. And that to me is like that medical model of like seeing your doctor once a year for a checkup. But I think sometimes the thing I love about mental health work too is like there are patterns, there are beliefs, there are values that we have developed from childhood that we take all the way through adulthood. And sometimes we don't even know that we're doing it. And part of what therapy does is gives you dedicated space to just evaluate. It doesn't mean you have to be in therapy for the rest of your life, but it does mean that, hey, we're just doing a little checkup, a little tune-up on the way that we're moving through the world.
And what about the person who's like just overwhelmed by the like feeling that I'll have to give you so much background to understand like where I'm even at? Like, do we need like 17 sessions before we can even like start to improve things? How long does it take to get to the meat of it? Or I guess that depends on the situation.
It really depends on the situation. I have rarely found a person who has come to see me for therapy who doesn't want to talk about history, because we don't get to do it. Like even when we meet, especially as adults, when we meet new friends, when we meet new coworkers, we don't sit there and tell them about, my life growing up and my siblings and how we got along and what my mom, we just don't. And to have that space to be able to do it, I rarely find people who don't want to. But I will say that like an intake where you sort of get the background is usually 1 to 2 sessions, right? And then you start working on your goals. The piece of advice I give for everybody looking for a therapist is ask people what their approach to the work is, right? How do you approach this work? What are my sessions going to look like? And a good therapist will be able to tell you that.
Good tip. Okay, so now let's talk about the price tag, because the therapy is not cheap. And we're in a pandemic. Folks are losing their jobs. Everyone's stressed. Last thing I need is another bill, right? Jancee, how can I find an affordable option? Do you have some thoughts there?
I do. One is an overlooked resource often is your local YMCA. They often have very robust mental health programming. And if you're a member, and sometimes even if you're not a member, they can connect you with qualified therapists that they have vetted who will work with you on a sliding scale, meaning based on your income. And if you don't have much income, they can work with you. And also you can call your local community centers. Often they can provide low-cost counseling. Or even, Dr. Mel, we were talking about this, you can use even a therapist in training, right? I know several friends who have done this and they found great therapists who are just not as experienced as you are, but still wonderful.
I was there. I was that person for many years where I saw clients when I was a student. I think another resource that I refer people to, is an organization called Open Path. They do low cost treatment. It's income based, and so you sort of let them know what's going on with you income wise, and they will get you sessions that are within your budget. Don't be afraid to use your insurance. I know sometimes people get overwhelmed by insurance, but once you find that list of people that are in network for you, go to Google and start Googling names. Most people have Psychology Today profiles, or they have a profile on a directory, or they have a website, so you can learn more about that person to see if it makes sense for you. There's out-of-network benefits. A lot of people don't know how to effectively use their out-of-network benefits. But you can end up not having to pay very much for therapy, even when you go out of network. And sort of the last thing I will name is that there's a lot of organizations out there who are offering you the ability to get free sessions, right? Even if it's for a limited amount of time. So for example, the Loveland Foundation gives women of color they cover 4 sessions. So they will give you a voucher, which will allow you to then, and a lot of providers will take that voucher and it'll at least give you either full coverage or partial coverage of 4 of your sessions. It's a great way for you to get started. I know Taraji P. Henson, I believe, does something similarly for Black men. There are other organizations that will offset the cost of a certain amount of sessions. You just might have to do a little bit of research, but there are resources available.
That is so great. And I think we'll follow up with you after this event to post those names of those organizations on our site under the event post for tonight so that folks can refer to those as a starting point before calling up their insurance company and figuring out how they might get some additional coverage. All right. So before we're almost near the end, but we haven't tackled the issue of sex. And I think we cannot end without talking about this because, I mean, hello. First of all, I mean, should we just get the CDC to officially cancel sex until we reach herd immunity? I mean, women have enough burden right now, right? So, Jancee, tell me if this scenario sounds familiar and what a woman could do. So we have a mom, busy day, taking care of kids, working from home, balancing all the things, trying to figure out a Zoom birthday party for somebody. Kids finally get tucked in. Mom lies down on the bed for what feels like, the first time all day. Dad swoops in to grab a boob, like out of nowhere. And mom is like, hell no, talk to the hand because the boob does not want to hear it right now. Okay. I'm like doing all the things for everybody. And it's like, it almost feels like obligation. I think this is one of the scenarios that you mentioned in your book. Mm-hmm. What is a mom and a dad to do if they do want to legitimately have sex at some point? How do they fit it into this pandemic world that we're in?
You have to talk about it, and people, research shows that if couples are talking about their sex life in the toilet, they're more likely to be having sex and they have more robust, connections. So that's something like nobody wants to talk about it, but and in our case, the pattern was just as you mentioned, that I was worn out, I was touched out. I mean, this is another thing that when you've had sticky little kids' hands on you all day, sometimes you are just touched out. And you think of sex as just one more thing to do for somebody when you've been microwaving chicken nuggets or whatever all day. And so for my husband and me, I would say things like, listen, can we do something? I felt obligated. So we had to get at what my issues were. One of them was time. I would think, okay, if we get going now, I need my sleep. I have to get up and work. It's going to take at least half an hour. That's too much information, but no, I can't. Time. So he said,
half an hour, Jancee, what's going on over there? That's another show.
And studies show, there was this huge study of, with all these sex therapists, and for maximum happiness, it's really the perfect amount of sex is once a week. And this was a huge amount of couples. I think it was like 40,000. Some were newlyweds. Some had been married for years and years and years. Once a week. That's not so bad. So I kind of had that in my mind. But anyway, back to so my issue was time. So my husband said, what if then my daughter was a toddler. He said, what if I put her to bed half an hour early? She doesn't know how to tell time. I said, bed, bath, book, do it. So he created half an hour. And he was very motivated to put her to bed, which he normally wasn't. And I thought, oh, he created a little time. Another was for me not to feel obligated. So he said, okay, what if I give you a massage, and not like the usual massage he gives you, just like scrunch, and then like, now you do me. It was a real massage with oil. And he said, if something happens, great. If it doesn't, no strings, it's fine. Well, I loved getting a massage. I felt relaxed and it worked. Another was, I said, okay, what if I really missed the closeness with him. I said, what if we just make out for a while? And I am not obligated to finish the job. Finish the job. I guess that's a phrase. And
you're not responsible for his orgasm.
I'm not responsible for his orgasm, Dr. Mel. And so we made out, and like, making out was something that just totally went by the wayside when I first had a baby. And I thought, well, this is kind of nice. And it almost like, you think, oh, okay, all right, yeah, I could maybe be responsible for his orgasm, and mine potentially. And so that worked also. So it was, you sort of have to strategize in a weird way. And Esther Perel, she's a sex therapist, very famous one. And she says, desire creates distance. I would also submit that it's good to, even within the closed confines of your house, try to create a little distance. In that, you can do something like cultivate more friends on, lately I've been reaching out to people. The pandemic, people are a little more open and friendlier. Cultivate outside interests so you have something to talk about where you're doing one thing and he's doing another. You don't even have to watch the same movie together every night. You can go to different parts of the house. It can be physical distance. So there's that too. I went on and on. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I think that's really a key point though, that you raised, that Esther Perel talks about. You need this mystery and you need desire is going to brew when you're apart. We're not apart. No one's ever apart. No one's ever apart. No one's ever showering. You talking about making out. I mean, are people even brushing their teeth anymore? Like making out right now, not high on my list. So, I think we need to think what are the strategies, even, things like date night, like that used to be your like reset button where you could, put on a nice outfit and go and no kids and have a grown-up conversation. That's even over. So Dr. Mel, do you have any strategies on, like Jancee was saying, these ways to kind of reformulate alone time or, couples only time?
I think definitely trying to figure out how to build back in date nights wherever you can. My husband and I love video games. So sometimes.
Uh-oh, Dr. Mel, are you frozen? Are you still there? I think we may have lost her temporarily. So Jancee, you and I will keep talking and hopefully she will come back to us.
Because I want to hear about the video games. I'll keep talking in the meantime. So it's a golden age of Zoom classes. Chefs that would normally never do classes, you can get access to. You can get access to great people now. Wine tastings, behind the scenes at museums, zoos. That's a thing now. And, so you can get access and you can get access to experts. So you can learn something together, which is really cool. We started, psychics do Zoom sessions. Who wouldn't want to do a psychic Zoom session, right? You can plan a vacation together because then you can sort of dream together, and do something for the far off future when we can all travel again. And even, this is something that we've done is, have you heard of Smule, Michaela?
No.
It's this karaoke app where you can sing with people all over the world. So you can make friends with people. You can sing a duet with somebody from Mexico or Spain. You can, and there's literally millions of songs that you can sing with them. And people have made friends on Smule. So my husband's been a big fan of Smule, and now I've started doing it, like singing with a total stranger. It's sort of exciting. It's novel, and novelty is something that really bolsters relationships. There's been research about that, brain research. So anytime you can try something new, even if it's takeout at a restaurant near that you haven't tried before, it's something new.
It's something new. And okay, first of all, I love karaoke, so I'm definitely going to check out this.
Oh, you'll love it.
Smule situation.
Smule, Smule. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that is a for sure. And your husband, actually, the one not to hate, wrote a book about learning new things. Did he not? Give a plug to the husband so he doesn't hate on us. What's the book called? Tell us, Jancee.
It's called Beginners. And that did help our marriage because he started learning stuff. And then I started sort of getting into it too. And when you can learn stuff together or apart, it makes for a nice, relationship enhancer. It really does.
I like that. I like that idea of doing a wine tasting. I think that's such a fun online thing that you could do together. And it's pretty, relatively easy and accessible.
Yeah, win-win.
That is a win-win. So we are almost out of time. Unfortunately, we may have lost Dr. Mel, but hopefully she will come back again, because I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface here on all of these, relationship issues that are so key. And we're going to be in this, situation for a while longer. So we've got to kind of keep at it here. I want to let you know that our next live event will be on March 9th, and we will be talking about the best toys and games for staying home a lot. You can register now at scarymommy.com/live-work-thrive. Thank you to our incredible panelists. Jancee Dunn, look for her work on bookstore shelves. How to Not Hate Your Husband After Kids is a great one. Pick that up. Love this book. She's also a regular contributor to the parenting section of the New York Times and many others. Dr. Mel, who is also working on a book. You will hear from her soon, and you can join Dr. Mel's email list. We'll have a link on the Scary Mommy Live.Work.Thrive page for you there. Thank you also to Karen Forstoff for sharing her information. And I just want to say to everyone out there, have a great night, Scary Mommies. Remember, if you and your partner are struggling, we hope that some of the advice that we've shared tonight will help. And if not, you can just turn on Bridgerton. I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving. If the Duke isn't the best thing about this pandemic, I mean, I really don't know what is. We are going to get through this. We will, because we are moms and we know how to live, work, and thrive. Good night, everyone.